Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Declan Morris. I'm an EIR at Costanella Ventures and the former CIO of Splunk. So I'd like to kick it off by, first of all, thanking all of you attendees for joining us. We know how very busy all of you are, and perhaps even more busy as a result of COVID than we would expect. So that's something we're actually going to cover in part of the discussion today with the panelists. And before we keep going here, I'd like to thank our panelists, and I'll introduce the panelists a little bit later. But last but not least, let's thank the Opsera team for sponsoring this event. Now, during the course of the panel discussion, we are going to encourage everybody to submit their questions through the Q&A feature in the Zoom session. So please feel free to jump in there and ask your questions. We'll do our very best to get to your questions, and if we are unable to do so, we'll make our utmost attempt to address those questions after the panel discussion here. There's four major themes that we're going to cover in today's panel discussion. The first one's around business continuity and resilience, and in the coming months and years, how we're actually going to adapt given the current situation that we're dealing with. The second one, which I know is very important to so many of you, is around the opportunities driven by an elastic workforce post-COVID. And we're really dealing with that when you think about all the work from home that we're dealing with day in, day out. Third, investments necessary to thrive in this new economy. And we read so much about how digital transformations are getting accelerated substantially, and we'll get into that with the panelists. Fourth, and last but not least, is increasing developer productivity. And I think about that in terms of release velocity while enhancing security, quality, and operational efficiencies. Because again, we don't have the luxury of this intimate interaction we once enjoyed when we were actually physically in an office. And so the goal of this session is to provide you, the audience, with key takeaways that you can actually provide and apply to your business. So with that, without further ado, what I'd like to do is actually introduce our panelists, starting with Sheila, then Fran, and then Ralph. So take it away, Sheila.
So hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. First, I want to say hi to my friends and fellow panelists. Hi, Fran and Ralph. Great to see you. Anyway, so who am I? So I'm now, as of 6 months ago, the Chief Digital Technology Officer at Honeywell. So prior to that, I was with 6.5 years with Symantec and worked very closely with Fran. And then prior to that, 8.5 years with Cisco. And then actually prior to that was 15 years at Walt Disney World in Florida. So started my kind of career there. So pretty vast background, pretty consumer, enterprise, security, network, and now Honeywell is kind of everything. I'm learning that it does a lot of everything from aerospace to oil and gas to industrial manufacturing to IoT. So I'm learning a lot about the Honeywell business and super happy to be here. So thanks for welcoming me and thanks for inviting me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sheila. And Fran, over to you.
Great. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here today. My name is Fran Roche. I'm the CEO of ForgeRock, and ForgeRock is a digital identity company. So we help enterprises and large enterprises create great frictionless identity experiences for both their employees as well as their consumers, while providing a lot of security and privacy kind of behind the scenes. So, and right now, as digital transformation becomes so critical, identity is such a key component of that. So that's what we do at ForgeRock. I joined the company a little over 2 years ago. It seems like a lot longer. I have a lot more gray hair than I did then. Prior to that, as Sheila mentioned, we were together at Symantec for about 8 years for me, a little bit longer, doing some both consumer and enterprise security. And then prior to that, I spent about a decade at VeriSign, doing a lot of identity and authentication. So a lot of time in kind of the cybersecurity and the identity space. So it's great to be here.
And I'm Ralph Laura. I am CIO for Lumentum. Lumentum's a photonics manufacturer. I've been here for a couple of years. And in fact, before that, was at a consumer goods company, online retail. I've been in high tech. I've been in life sciences and at a consumer goods company. So similar to Sheila, have been cross industry and played this role in a number of different companies of different sizes.
Great, thanks again, Ralph, Fran, and Sheila. So Sheila, we're going to kick it off with you. We're going to talk about business continuity and resilience in the coming months and years, and certainly in your situation, joining Honeywell, throwing COVID, and you've had a baptism by fire, right? So my question to you is, how effective or resilient were your business continuity plans when there was a shift to work from home? And now that we're firmly into a new way of operating, how has that impacted both staffing and facilities needs?
Yeah, so that's a pretty loaded question. So let me give you a little outline of what happened. So I joined, Honeywell in January, and it had a very large. So one of the reasons why I joined Honeywell is because it had a very, very, very enormous digital transformation agenda. So I came in a bit naive. Oh my God, we did 9 transformational programs at Symantec. We did public cloud, and we did consolidating ERPs and subscription billing. And when I walked into Honeywell, there was 42 transformational programs, all in flight. Every function, every SBG, our strategic business units, everything. And as you know, IT and data sit at the hub of any of that digital transformation. So one, I was kind of excited, and just one of the reasons I came is because it really was pivoting to a software company and a whole bunch of other things that we're doing. But the reality was, when I came in, it was a pretty significant agenda. Having said that, March 17th, they made the decision to actually work from home. So when you look at the scale and size of Honeywell with 110,000 employees in 83 countries, we hadn't really tested the architecture for 110,000, especially a big percentage of manufacturing employees working from home. So we quickly assessed, we're not really ready to do that. And the team called our significant partners and was able to re-architect the entire network and get 110,000 employees in 83 countries working from home in 8 days. Never would have made that bet. So the team just came up. Again, we call our key partners and key relationships to be able to pull that off. But one of the things that I'm really super excited about digital, and even today, and the excitement about business continuity and resiliency, is I don't see digital going away. I think at any level, I think that people that were holding on tight to their old way of doing work have now seen, and literally you've got CEOs, you've got CFOs, COOs, you've got the world sitting on your devices and your computer, 12 hours a day. So we're all seeing the potential. We're kind of being forced into it, but we're seeing the potential of really what digital can do. So I don't really believe we're ever going to go back to working the way we were working. I do think when we return to the office, it's going to be different. I think, technology has become super relevant in every single thing we do, not only working from home, but as we think about our go-to-market and customers and partners and employees. So I think it's those CEOs that are really making big bets and keeping they're doing what they can to really drive their digital transformation agenda. I think they're going to be stronger companies coming out of it. And I think digital is really here to stay. So that's my thoughts for now.
No, absolutely. Well said. And in fact, from a CEO perspective, who better than to have Fran follow up? So Fran, as a CEO, looking at from a customer perspective, what are the types of challenges did your customers face as part of switching to this whole, COVID elastic workforce? And how have your customers been adapting?
Yeah, thanks, Declan. And I certainly agree with everything Sheila said, that this has been a massive shift and it's here to stay. As you mentioned, from a ForgeRock perspective, our transition was relatively easy. We have about 650 employees. We were already 50% work from home. So to go that 100% was really quite simple. But from a customer standpoint, that's where really we saw the biggest impact of these changes. So we've got about 1,100 enterprise customers, including some really large financial services, public sector, telco media, digital retail, and they just saw these massive spikes in their business. So one of our largest financial services customers, they said that they saw the traffic to their bank branches go to almost zero, where their digital banking traffic went up 300% in a single day. So these organizations had very little notice to prepare for that type of spike in usage of their digital channels. And we also support a lot of our customers for their employee workforce, and seeing that shift to 100%. So they were seeing volumes that they had no reason to expect to be there. And the ability to meet that challenge has been really fun to be part of that with our customers. And by and large, everybody was really able to step up to those higher demands. But it's been an amazing shift. It's really everybody's become a remote worker, and we as consumers are managing 100% of our lives. And what we hear a little about from identity experience is the identity can be the worst part of that shift. I mean, who wants to set up another username, another password, another sea of questions? How do we make that identity experience so much easier? So it's been a really interesting 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, I bet. You reminded me, I was on the CIO of a Bay Area regional bank here, and he basically went from a situation where branches were the only means by which they conducted business to overnight dried up, and they have to have an entire e-commerce presence. So these are very, very challenging times.
So I want to bring in Ralph.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just a real quick example on that. We have one digital retail customer who's very famous and has announced that they're moving through bankruptcy. And we thought, that's going to really hurt our business there. But they came to us and said, the only thing that we're not cutting on is our digital channel. Like everything else is being reduced, but we know we're only going to survive through this bankruptcy if our digital channel is strong. And so that's the one part of the business we're going to continue to spend and maintain. So that just was really putting your money where your mouth is.
No, absolutely. And when you look at what's going on, Ralph, you are absolutely front and center in this digital transformation. And so when you look at your business, you've got also interesting challenges, somewhat similar to Sheila, that you've got a supply chain, a complex supply chain. And you shared a very interesting story that actually helped you pre-COVID, as you were prepping for a major transformation, that actually played out so well for you. And here we are currently in the COVID situation. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. About 1.5 years ago, we acquired a company called Aclaro, and we spent about a year doing ERP integration, as you do. They were on SAP, we were on Oracle, and so some complications about data and process integration. So the project was going quite well. We had a due date or a cutover date planned for January 28th. And of course, one of the major factories is in Shenzhen, China. And intent was to have a command center in Shenzhen on the 28th of January. And so because we're a manufacturing company with large operations in Asia, and because, I've got enough gray hair to have been around the block a few times, I lived through a consumer goods company when the Fukushima disaster occurred, and we spent a month where we couldn't ship product because it was stuck on a container in Japan. I lived through environments where we were impacted by bird flu and swine flu and some of the other regional pandemics that affected people getting to the office and the ability to get things in and out and so on. So about 4 months before cutover, we were running through our failure case analysis. And one of the failure cases was, hey, what if, for some reason, either the people couldn't work, i.e. a virus, or we couldn't ship stuff, i.e. a regional disaster, what would happen? And so we modeled a bunch of those scenarios. So when it came kind of mid-January and we started seeing the data coming out of Wuhan, we made a decision that, hey, let's go trigger plan B. We ran a virtual command center out of a different location. We were able to kind of engage. We'd also forecast and manage, hey, what if our key signers who were supposed to sign off on data conversions in Shenzhen couldn't be in Shenzhen? What's our plan B? Who are the backup signatories and so on? So we triggered all of that. The go live went completely smoothly. And I would like to say we saw this coming miles away, but obviously we did not understand this would be global. This would last for, 2 or 3 or however many quarters we're going to go through. But the fact that we've been through this before, all IT leaders have, all business leaders have, some version of this means we were prepared to address those sort of inevitabilities and then trigger a response plan against that. Now, even though we did all that, we still have a global supply chain. And one of the challenges we have is over the years, you try to get leaner and leaner and leaner. Hey, let's get rid of excess and obsolete. Let's get rid of redundancy. Let's get a lean, clean path. And so we did find that in our supply chain, we had challenges where, when the country of Malaysia said, you can't go into your factory anymore, we were able to build some of those products in another factory. The problem was we couldn't get the parts that were in Malaysia out of Malaysia over to the other factory, right? That were parts that were key supply elements that that weren't sourced in 2 locations and so on. So we did learn a bit about resilience, and frankly, we are now applying, computer algorithms and IT to that problem to really help make sure that we've got we're managing multidimensional risk in the way we look at our supply chain.
Amazing. So basically, your ERP transformation was almost like a forcing function that you're still reaping tremendous benefit from even today.
Yeah, well, the one thing that was kind of lucky, I will say, is we had done inventory builds in advance of the cutover, just in case we had some issue. We didn't. So the good news is all that inventory build we got to use to mitigate supply risk in the pandemic instead of our ERP cutover. So it was a kind of paid a double benefit, double dividend in our case. So that was positive.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely incredible. I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to go over to the opportunities driven by an elastic workforce post-COVID. And, Sheila, again, we were having a very interesting conversation because you're in a massive, if you like, talent transformation more than anything else. And so not only the transformation in terms of talent, and it's not just about COVID, it's also about diversity, quality, inclusion, Black Lives Matter. So when you bring all of this together, what are your thoughts as a leader as you look to transform your entire workforce?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So again, as I mentioned, when I came in, and I knew coming in, and it was validated in 30 days, just a massive transformation, digital transformation agenda our CEO Darius has, and like it really is across all functions. The other observation I had was 68% of the IT organization was outsourced, which means that we were paying third-party providers to do the work, do the deployment. We get the projects done, we move on, and all that IP, all that intelligence walked out the door. So there's no way I could manage an IT organization. The IT organization didn't reflect the needs of what the digital transformation agenda was. So during COVID, I was able to approve a strategy that insources, 40 of the major initiatives. We get to insource that work, build the technical depth, make sure we have the skills to basically run our data centers and do work around the new platforms like Adobe or anything else, or in some of the other Salesforce and the other work that we're doing, but to really build that technical depth so that we really can respond to not only the project work, because that's relatively easy to kind of go and use third parties for, but it really is about the sustainment, the run, the operating, the ability to do enhancements. A CEO has a great idea, you want to go turn that around in the next day or two. So super excited. We're actually hiring. I just launched the 3rd phase of this hiring, which is around 600 heads we're hiring, and that was just launched on LinkedIn. So if you happen to be looking for a position, we're hiring. The locations are Charlotte, Atlanta, and Phoenix, but of course we're in 4 locations within India, in Mexico, and EMEA. So it is global. And this is my 2nd time now of being able to build a world-class IT organization. So I don't take that lightly, and it's super exciting. So we are really focused on global, diverse organization. And I mean diverse at every level: gender, ethnicity, age, millennials, interns. I mean, I really want to make sure that we are having a global, diverse organization so that we can really deliver diverse thinking for the overall organization. And I'm happy to report that of the 400 jobs that were posted, we had like 11,000 applicants. So the talent in the marketplace is significant right now, and we really are being able to hire a world-class organization that's global, diverse, and going to help us deliver the technical talent that we need. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, no, it's incredible to think that you're basically going to hire the number of people that's equivalent to Fran's company. So Fran's got about 650, and you're just going to basically hire
but Fran's the CEO, so that matters.
Sheila plays in the big leagues. Sheila always plays in the big leagues.
But it's an interesting challenge and also a bit of an opportunity, because you're no longer tethered to HQ in the way that we have been previously, that you actually can hire and cast a much wider net to attract talent. So again, folks, 600 people that, Sheila's busy onboarding. That's a lot of interviewing. So shifting gears.
The whole thing. So I just want to make a point on that. Our HR team is extraordinary. We've done the whole thing through digital. We have digital assessments. We have a competency assessment. We do digital technical training. We're hiring digital. The managers are hiring digital. So it's really, I mean, you talk about a whole new experience on being able to change and transform your workforce. I mean, so many people we're hiring won't see the physical office space for several months. So it's super exciting. I mean, you really think about, you know, how important, and I've always said that, you know, video is so critical and so important because it is that way we can continue to connect, even though we're not together. It's a way to really connect, and it's so much more powerful than audio, and you're able to do a lot of this hiring completely virtual.
Absolutely. Fran, for you, how's the nature of engagement changed with your customers? And are there differences in how these elastic workforces are operating for customers based in the Americas, EMEA, and APAC? In other words, you don't have the luxury of going out dispatching your sales team to meet face-to-face with your clients and afterwards bring in a professional services team to complete the engagement. So tell us a little bit more about how are you adapting your business where you've lost that kind of tactile reach with your customer?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We've noticed it really in 3 different areas: marketing, sales, and kind of customer support and deployment. Those were things that were very in person. We did a lot of marketing events where we get people together. Obviously, our salespeople would go out and do demos and work directly with customers. And then our technical support team, professional services, would travel and be part of a deployment team to get our technologies up and running for the customer. None of that is happening anymore. And what I would say is some of it's going better than others. I think from a marketing perspective, our marketing team was very worried. Oh, another webinar. Nobody wants to go to webinars. We'll never get any leads anymore. And we're finding just the opposite. We had our an annual event we call Identity Live that we switched from physical, where we did them around the world, to digital. We ended up reaching 4 times as many people. Now it's for a shorter period of time, 90 minutes instead of a day, but we're reaching more people and getting more contact out there. So, and for less money. So we're actually seeing we're getting better quality leads for less money. So as Sheila said, we're never going back. We're not going to go back to that kind of event-driven approach. I don't think people want it. From a sales perspective, I think that's been a little bit more challenging. So, you know, we do enterprise and large enterprise sales. And even though customers learn a lot about your offerings digitally, ultimately they want to meet you, and selling is a lot of our relationships. And so that's had to switch to digital. And I think we're still learning how best to engage, how to make it as professional as possible, how to be able to develop those relationships. It was generally not a big impact in the first half of the year because most of those relationships were built pre-COVID. But now, as Sheila said, we're hiring people we're never meeting. We're developing customer relationships with people we've never met. So training our salespeople in virtual selling, which in a way, some salespeople look down on. Oh, that's inside sales. We're all in inside sales now. So that's been a big change. And then the last point on technical support, that's been a super easy change because as you kind of talk about the elastic workforce, nobody really has a physical presence anymore. Most of our customers are running their solutions in the cloud. They're either running their solutions in AWS, GCP, Azure. So their own teams aren't physically located where their technology is anymore. That's completely gone. And their teams tend to be very distributed, either out of some of our customers have teams in India. They're all working from home. So we actually have found it very smooth for our professional services to kind of move to a, remote. That's great for the employee base because they were logging, over 100,000 miles a year away from their families and all of that kind of wasted time to travel to somebody's office only to log on and support an application that was running up in the public cloud. In the way you look back on that, it doesn't even make sense. So I think, it's been a big transition, but one that so far has worked out pretty well. And we'll get those salespeople over that ego of only they can do it in person. So Declan, are you there?
I think we just lost Declan.
Oh no.
Well, while we're waiting for Declan to join. Oh,
Chandra, you want to jump in?
You're mute, Chandra.
Yes, I'll cover for Declan while he comes back. Ralph, we wanted to kind of address that question from your perspective as well, given your supplier and supply chain as well as customer, but we'd also like you to address that from a technology standpoint as well, if you can.
Yeah. So it's interesting. One of the challenges, so, I mean, I won't say Sheila and Fran have it easy, right? Sheila, Honeywell makes things like we do. Fran is a bit more abstract. You're making things in software. But when you make physical things, much of so Lumentum is essentially an R&D company that happens to manufacture things. But most of our work, a lot of the key work of the company is done in a lab, right? With multi-million-dollar or tens or hundreds of million dollars worth of equipment. I can't ship everybody $1 million lab in their house to put it in their guest room so they can continue to work on, on new technology around, gratings or around fiber optics or around 3D sensing gear, right? So I do have to bring certain people to the office. There is a physical presence needed because they're interacting in a physical space. Additionally, I have a factory environment where obviously we're making things, but I have plant engineers, I have quality engineers. And we've found a way, right? So we found a way to mitigate some of that issue so we can keep going. So our quality engineers who normally would be flying every month to a plant, running a Kaizen event, doing Six Sigma improvements and doing optimization of a line and so on, are now doing a lot of that work remotely. We've looked at 26 different tools. We selected a tool called Miro, which is a great kind of collaborative whiteboarding, sticky note, mind mapping kind of tool that does a lot of that interactively. So we can do some of those things we would normally do in front of a whiteboard or in a big room together. We can kind of get through most of it online. It's not ideal, it's not as good as, but it's adequate to keep moving. We've had a new product introduction happen from the R&D team in Zurich, shipping a product to Thailand and trying to teach the team in Thailand how to build that product, right? An NPI line going up. Normally that would be, engineers spending quality time helping operators set up and understand the nuances of the line and so on. Now there's a lot of, kind of GoPro cameras and iPads and tablets and remote, remote control essentially of the individual on the line, trying to walk people through things in that way. Again, not as high fidelity or as good as being in person, but it works. And so we're finding we have a lot of techniques that allow us to kind of keep things going. I think there is a sense though, a lot of people have talked about, hey, we may never go back to the office. In our case, we are clearly going back to the office. In fact, we're already there. We are much of what we do are essential products, and therefore we have essential workers, because many of the products Lumentum makes powers the internet. And the minute we all started working from home, every carrier in the world, every ISP in the world doubled their order for whatever they had coming, right, to deal with capacity issues. And we're some of those products that are fulfilling that capacity. So it's vital that we, continue to make and design and improve what we're doing. So that's a difference here. We think the future world involves hybrid version of where we were. Now, lots of people can debate what that means. I have a lot of concerns, and I know Sheila is brilliant at this, brilliant at culture, brilliant at setting the tone from the top. But man, I would be concerned, and I'm sure you are, hiring 600 people, and then not actually seeing any of them in the office, not actually interacting, not having an offsite, not going to meet and greet. How do you instill culture in 600 random people working from their bedrooms at home instead of, kind of having the onboarding experience and the acculturation experience of a campus? So stuff like that is stuff that I worry about in the brave new world we're heading in. How do we deal with some of those issues longer term?
Can I just comment on that though? One of the things I've learned at Honeywell is, we all know with our experiences in the last few years that we've all had and over our entire work experience is that culture really matters. Like when CEOs don't take the time to really create and decide what the culture is, and everyone's off, especially in the world of M&A and acquisitions and divestitures, I mean, sometimes the culture gets lost. And I think what I've learned in the last 10, 15 years is culture really matters, and having a very explicit statement about culture. So the thing I love about Honeywell, and again, one of the reasons why I joined, is we have 8 behaviors that drive the culture. And they're super easy to read. They're not like the poster on the wall. We really use it to be accountable. We drive accountability. We use it every day and every reminder. And it's like things like be courageous, be bold, think big and make it happen. And it's not, again, just a poster on the wall, because I think we've all had those statements, but it's ingrained into the whole behavior of the company. And so you can go break glass, you can go do something different, you can take educated risks. And we're encouraging everybody in the organization to do that. So Ralph, I totally agree with you on like, oh my God, how do you create this? And you know you're not going to get 100% accuracy on hiring and all that. But the reality is that when you have a culture that can stand behind you as the values and behaviors we're expecting, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, I think that a crisis like that gives you the opportunity to work those culture muscles. Anybody can have a good culture when times are really good, but as we all had to make these dramatic changes in how we worked and how we dealt with customers and everything, if you did that through a lens of your culture, if you already had that foundation in place, you already had those 8 things that Sheila talked about, we have 5, then it made it easier and it actually gave you an opportunity to step up. So, you know, it was kind of fork in the road. You either embrace it and you gave you a chance to even prove these things to your employees.
But you know what's really interesting is that we're facing a situation unlike anything we've ever experienced before. And the intimacy that we've counted on in the past has been lost. So one of the things that I actually want to take a look at, and I'd like to actually throw up a live poll to the audience, is in regards to, from an engineering perspective, right? The DevOps piece and how effective are your current set of digital tools capable of supporting a remote workforce? Because this is our reality. We've got to enable this remote workforce. So can we actually get the live poll up and running? Excuse me. So please, folks, take a look and make a suggestion.
It's interesting. While people are doing that, since we're not allowed to vote, one thing that comes to mind to me is I was talking to somebody recently about not on DevOps, on a different topic, and we were describing our vision, our intent, our strategy, and how we saw the problem, and then we described what our current reality was, and they were like, "Wow, you guys are like a 5 on strategy. Unfortunately, you're like a 1 on capability, right?" So a lot of us know what to do. We know the right thing to do. But, you know, for various reasons, there are 20 other priorities and you haven't got to it yet, or it's going to, like, often we're not quite where we want to be aspirationally in our journey of execution.
No, absolutely. And I think what we've compensated so much in the past is what I call the human middleware, in the absence of the ability to orchestrate across large tracks of technology. And I'm not talking just DevOps. This is what we've actually ended up with. So let's take a look and see what the results are from the poll. Okay, this is quite interesting. Quite an interesting split. No real standout. So everything from DevOps, tools for all, lack of automation, tied with no end-to-end visibility, and then shortage of skilled resources. And of course, all the above. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, we're really dealing with this right now. So let's keep moving here. I want to take a look at increasing developer productivity and release velocity while enhancing security, quality, and operational efficiencies. So again, I'm going to provide a little bit of context to the panelists and to the audience here. Because of COVID, we've seen an acceleration in the adoption of multi-cloud technologies. We're living through this, right? The acceleration has only increased the sprawl of new technologies and developer tools driven by the needs and wants of the developers, okay? So teams are under greater pressure to increase release velocity while reducing time to market as more companies embrace the digital initiatives. Add to the mix a remote workforce and a shortage of DevOps skills, and you've got the ingredients for a perfect storm, right? So Sheila, my question to you is, with Honeywell composed of multiple portfolio companies, its inevitable development teams across the company have their developer tools of choice, right? For both internal and externally facing systems. What are your thoughts from a strategic perspective when it comes to accelerating software delivery without compromising developer choice, as well as security and efficiencies?
So those of you who worked with me before know I am very much a fan of platforms. So long gone is the day of best of breed. You can't afford it. We're always, I mean, the thing I love about IT, and the thing that always happens, is everyone wants IT, everyone needs IT, but nobody really wants to ever pay for IT. So we always are under significant cost pressures and significant challenges in the efficiency and all of that. So I'm a big believer of platforms. I don't think most IT shops can afford best of breed, meaning let's go buy a whole bunch of stuff because then IT's stitching it together and then you've got to deal with that. Whereas if you can build a platform and use that across the organization for many, many, many things, it really does help both the cost, the viability. Usually platforms are, are known and mature, and so therefore it has deeper levels of security. So you're not trying to figure out the whole security aspect on these best of breeds. So you're reducing risk, time to market, all of that. So I'm a big fan of platforms, and where we can look for those platforms that really do deliver a holistic view. It doesn't, and this is where I think the trade-off is. Best of breed assumes that you're getting the best of that specific capability or thing. When in reality, I'd rather get a good enough platform and build on it, especially like with APIs and marketplaces, and get the platform good enough, because the real value is in those APIs and marketplaces and what you do with the platform. So I'm all about, crushing best of breed technologies and moving to more of the platform approach, because it has huge benefits to the IT organization and to the business over the long term.
Nicely put. And then for you, Ralph, what are some of the gaps you're seeing in organizations adopting the DevOps methodology, and suggestions on addressing these gaps? And then how important is it to automate and orchestrate the various DevOps tools with a white box approach without sacrificing security, speed, and agility?
Yeah, so I think one of the things we've seen out of this shift to work from home is interesting. For the first time in history, I think the business in some ways is now capable of moving faster than IT. Right? So IT, I think, has been accelerating for a long time. We're at the end of a cycle waiting for a sign off or an approval or some steer code review and whatnot. And often it can take weeks, right? It's, hey, I need to schedule a meeting with the CEO and 2 of his direct reports. Well, one of them's in Asia, 2 of them are, with customers. It takes you a week and a half to get the meeting. You have the meeting, you have a question that you can't answer in the meeting, so you just have a follow-up meeting. And so 3 weeks have gone by before you get a decision made. Well, now that we're all working from home, you need a meeting with those guys. You can have it today. You can have the conversation. If you need a question answered, you pull the person into the room that's missing, they answer the question. And so that 3-week cycle turned into a 3-day cycle or a 3-hour cycle now to get key decisions made and move, right? So that's awesome. That's fantastic. But if your IT systems are still geared toward, your phase gate review process and your milestones are driven over the timeline of weeks and months, you can't keep up anymore. And so the business is now waiting on us. So one of the key things is we have to change the methodology and the way we think about sequencing work, planning work, organizing these things. We got to take the buffers out of our project plans for decision sign-offs and things like that. In fact, most of my leadership team are now running their organization via the morning scrum, essentially, to talk about work in queue, what's being done, and then prioritize that, as opposed to a traditional project-oriented kind of thing. The challenge we have is we're a global organization. So we're in 22 countries. We have substantial people in over 16 locations around the world. So it's very difficult to keep those people in sync, coordinated, who's doing what, where, why, and how things line up. So having a good tool chain, having a good clear process set so that the handoffs are clear, the who touched what is clear, the approvals are clear, so you don't end up falling, tripping over yourselves because you get out and ahead of your skis far too often. The other big challenge we have, and I think everybody has to some degree, is developers, bless their souls, no matter how talented or capable or thoughtful they are, their goal is to develop a solution, right? Develop software. They often don't think, they may think in terms of architectural security, but they rarely think in terms of operational security because they've never been a computer sysadmin before or a network engineer before. So they're writing code that to them is secure, but maybe has issues because of the way the interplay that occurs between layers of the stack or between the way clouds interoperate or the way the monitoring software works and so on. So you really need to embed security review, security execution into that tool chain, or you run the risk of getting, again, out in front of your skis from a risk perspective.
Yeah, I think that's very, very interesting. Just a couple of things that stand out. One is you don't want to lose the velocity that you picked up around decision making, which I think is key. And the second thing is when you look at it from an engineering perspective, you actually want to shift left when it comes to security, get that into the system early. And that way it'll pay off dividends. So Fran, question for you. So ForgeRock is an identity provider to some of the most security sensitive customers, such as healthcare and banking. So with COVID accelerating a migration to the cloud, what trends have you seen in your customer base with respect to migrating to or embracing multi-cloud technologies?
Sure. Yeah, and I would build off some of the trends that Sheila talked about. I think this move to platform is really, we hear a lot out there. So we have one of our large customers is the BBC, and they have a lot of different channels, not like TV channels, but a lot of different ways to reach customers over digital, over the web, over mobile, over traditional TV, and they have their customers, they have their partners, they have their employees, and they end up having, like, these developers just want to build great apps, as Ralph was saying, right? So every developer was kind of building their own little identity stack into all of these different applications and customer touch points. And they said that just doesn't work. It's just overhead expense we're paying. So how do we find basically one single identity platform that can serve all the needs of all of those different applications and customer and employee touch points, so that each of those developers can really focus on their core business and not worrying about that identity stack. So that's one big move, is kind of that platform approach that Sheila talked about. I think another thing we hear from the groups, that the developers and the IT professionals we support, is it's a lot about simplicity. I think there was, in solutions, there was a time where IT organizations had big dev teams, and they would kind of want to buy a toolkit so that they can kind of configure this toolkit the way they wanted to, exactly right for them. And what we're seeing, at least from the terms of identity, people now know what great looks like, and they want those great self-service, frictionless identity experiences, and they don't want to build them themselves. So they want that kind of out of the box solutions. And then third definitely is cloud. There was a time where, I'm never going to put my identity information, up in the cloud, and that's really changed. So we have an architectural approach that is the same code base, where their customers want to run kind of on-prem in their own private cloud, whether they want to run in public cloud or leverage our as a service model. And there's just no doubt that the shift is moving more and more to as a service. There are going to be some global financials that are a little bit slower in that move. Young companies are more, accelerating, but it's platform, it's simplicity in solutions, and it's moving to the cloud. Those are definitely things that we're hearing from our customer base. And what we're challenging our development team to build for solutions, build for best practice, build for easy running in the cloud. And that's kind of where we're focused.
Yeah, no, I agree. We're becoming an economy of APIs.
Yes.
And as somebody once said to me, APIs are the new S3 buckets. So in other words, make sure you have them correctly configured, and make sure you're not exposing too much of that data to the world. And that's, again, front and center in your space, Fran. So thanks for your thoughts there. Now, what I'd like to do is I'm just going to cut over to Chandra, who's just going to tell us a little bit about Opsera before we close it out, hopefully with a little bit of time to get, we may not have time for Q&A, but at least I want to go back to the panelists and your closing thoughts, ideally 3 key takeaways for the audience that you can share. So Chandra, tell us a little bit about Opsera.
Thanks, Declan. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I wanted to start by thanking our esteemed panelists here and also our attendees for your time today. I just wanted to say that we're fortunate to have Sheila and Fran and Ralph with us, given the experience, the industry luminaries they are. A lot of excellent insights here. Some of the things that stayed with me here is the migration to the cloud, adoption of more and more cloud being accelerated by COVID. The platform approach, right? Not necessarily best of breed, but give me good enough, but make them all work together. The focus on shipping fast, velocity, without compromising security and quality of delivery. And finally, I think Sheila also talks a lot about metrics, right? In terms of what are those best metrics to measure and improve productivity for Elastic workforce, but also for distributed development and operations teams. I would add to that a dearth of talent as well, right? The ability to find and hire highly qualified DevOps engineers. I'd like to introduce Opsera, which focuses on addressing some of those or many of those opportunity areas that were discussed. Opsera is a continuous orchestration and intelligence platform for modern DevOps. Opsera features self-service automation of any DevOps CI/CD toolchain, any stack across any cloud, focus being there on choice and ability to self-serve. Also declarative pipelines in seconds for various use cases. So developers don't have to worry about building, managing pipelines. They can focus on shipping code, and also unified insights and logs for easy decision-making, actionable insights that leaders so much need. Our focus and mission is on enabling software delivery to be fast, easy, and secure. For more information, you can visit opsera.io to request access or sign up for a demo. Please also stay tuned for our upcoming launch and potential free trial in Sandbox. We'll announce more on that. Once again, I'd like to thank our panelists and yourself as well, Declan. Great questions, great insights. I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chandra. And there's another reason why Opsera is so important, because it sounds as if Sheila's hiring everybody and there'll be no one left. So you will actually need technology versus people. So
let's not start rumors that aren't true. I am not hiring everybody.
She's only hiring the best people. That's all.
The best,
there you go.
right? Absolutely.
But you know, nothing's further from the truth, right? I mean, there's just, irrespective, there's just such a shortage of talent. We've talked about this before around the API economy, also about building platforms, and we actually need these ecosystems to scale. And Ralph, you highlighted it so well. You know, the business is actually gapping us on some of these decisions. And so we've got to accelerate. We've got to move faster. We don't have the luxury of time. And so things such as Opsera are so important, because, you know, we want all of that taken care of. We don't want to be mired in building that because the business doesn't see the benefit. And so what I'd like to do is see if we can get to maybe one or two questions from the audience, and then we'll get a rapid fire closing thoughts from the panelists. So let me see here. I'm just going to go and grab one here if I can. So let me see. Humor me for 1 second, folks. And I'll just pull up here. So here's a question. How are orgs handling the impact of COVID-19 on mental health and stress of the employees? And how are leaders remaining sane? So, I mean, this is just really the crux of it all, right? We've been dancing around this topic, but I mean, mental health and the well-being, not just of your employees, but yourself. Who'd like to comment on that?
Well, I think everybody has a story, but let me three just really quick points. One, you know, first this was all just, hey, just survive, right? The first couple of weeks or month. And then we all woke up and realized we were working 16-hour days, right? We're sitting in front of a screen and not moving because of all the kind of pile of stuff to do. One of the big insights we had is normally I'd fly to Japan once a quarter, Thailand once a quarter to go interact with our plant people. And while there, I'd be working long days, but I'd be focused on all the stuff there. And I'd kind of put the stuff at home on back burner. And then when I get back from my trip, I'd kind of deal with those things. Now what's happened is, since you're not traveling, hey, if someone in Thailand needs a meeting with you, they just book a meeting with you. It just happens to be at 10 o'clock at night. And then somebody in Europe books a meeting that happens to be at 4 in the morning. And so all of a sudden our calendars are kind of crazy because we're just jumbling things together. So one of the ways we've been trying to manage that for our leadership team is, hey, we'll do the quarterly business stuff for Japan, but we're going to group that into a certain week. And we'll all agree to work late that week. We'll shift our calendars as if we were traveling. And then you got to let go of some of the local stuff so that we're not burning the 16, 18-hour days, that you're trying to compress that into something reasonable. That's one. Two, maintaining contact with your employees. Like I just did a one-on-one with one of my VPs, and there's 100 projects. There's a ton of things that we're working on. We spent 40 minutes catching up on, like, that he took a trip, they went camping. I basically told him he had to leave the office and turn his phone off, or I was going to come take it away from him, kind of thing, because he needed a break. And we just spent a lot of time catching up with each other on what we're doing and where things are. And it was like, yeah, well, send me an email with status and some of the other stuff, and we'll kind of catch up on that. So don't forget to lead with people first versus being so focused on the operational stuff every day. And then one thing our CEO is doing that at first I thought, I wasn't sure what I thought about it, and it turns out it's a fantastic idea, we've all heard about Zoom bombing, right? People kind of dropping in on meetings without the passwords and so on. So we're doing it intentionally. So our CEO loves to drop in on, he would stick his head in the conference room, what's going on, how are you work? Like he loves to interact with the team. And so what we do now is we pull a list of every meeting for the next upcoming week, including its access codes and so on. We send him a spreadsheet with all the meetings in the company for the upcoming week. And if he's got a spare 15 minutes, he will Zoom bomb, he will drop in on that meeting unannounced and just say, hey, what's going on? Like people are first shocked. They're like, oh my God, the CEO's here. What's going on? And he'll spend 10 or 15 minutes. He gets a charge out of it. They get a charge out of it. You know, he gets a sense of what's happening around the company. So it's been a really cool way to kind of help, you know, kind of recreate in virtually what you could have done physically in the past.
That's very insightful. And by the way, your CEO's standing behind you. He's actually Zoom bombing you right now. So look, folks, we've got about 5 minutes left. And I'd love to just go around this virtual room with closing thoughts. And what I, again, would like to ask the panelists, you know, 3 key takeaways that you think for those that are attending could potentially apply to their business. And I think, you know, I'm going to weave this in because I think there's a really excellent question that came in about how do you build a culture in a 100% decentralized organization all over the world. So maybe just weave that in with your thoughts because I think we can actually address this because I'm sure it's top of mind for you. It was an excellent question. So Sheila, if you don't mind, we'll kick it off with you, Fran, and then Ralph.
Yeah, so I think, again, I'll say digital is here to stay. So the thing I would say is that I love Ralph's assessment of kind of the how do you not be exhausted during this process and all that. And I just want to quote John Chambers because I worked 9 years at Cisco, and he taught us and taught me personally that activity does not equal results. It doesn't matter that you're busy 12 hours a day. What matters is the results and the impact that you're having on the organization. So as leaders, and really anyway, you've got to constantly prioritize. Where should you spend your time and effort? If I have 10 people from IT in a meeting, I don't need to attend. So it's constantly about where you spend the time and energy and effort to not just deliver results not just create activity and be in that meeting, but make conscious choices about prioritization where you personally can make the biggest impact and add value to the company. That's number one. The second is you got to take this opportunity to build for the future. I think the companies that will sustain and the ones that will live and the ones that will have longevity after it is you got to spend the time in building for the future. We will get through this. We will get through this together. No one knows when, but this will change. And we want to make sure that I want to make sure that whenever that is, 4 months, 3 months, 12 months, 18 months, that I can look back and say, we did everything we possibly could to build a company for the future. So those are really the 2 pieces of advice I have. Thanks
so much. And then Fran, your closing thoughts?
Great. You know, I would say that in this time of distributed, there are a couple of things people really need to focus on. First is customers. And, you know, we really tried to double down with empathy and know that our customers are going through really difficult times. How can we be there for them? So everything we try to look at is through a customer success model. I think second, again, as everyone's distributed, you used to be able to get by with, I think, less clarity because people were together in a room and could kind of have those hallway or conversations to clarify things. We feel like now it's more important to be extra clear and extra over communicate on what the priorities are, what the missions are, what the metrics are, what the results are. You know, removing ambiguity because the only way you do it now is virtually. And then I think third from us from a development standpoint, you know, develop, you know, solutions API driven for the cloud because, you know, in our world, customers want to consume services and have short time to value and not science projects. So that's kind of where the 3 things that I would recommend people keep focused on, though there are probably 50 more.
No, that's great. And again, thanks for the call out on the customer because the customers experience a lot of pain. So Ralph, you get to bring us home. Bring us home, Ralph.
Hey, great. And so by the way, as per typical in work from home, the garbage truck just showed up outdoors. So if you got any background noise, that's what's going on. The dog will probably start barking in the window anytime now. So I would say three quick things, right? One, I hear a lot of people talking about the new normal or, you know, when this is all over. And I think that's just sort of defeatist thinking. Like it's not bold enough. To Sheila's point, like what I don't want is an incrementally better version of what we used to have. What I want is a totally new version of what we think the future should look like, right? It shouldn't be, don't set your sights too low. Be bold, we should be disruptive. We have not only license to do so, but we've got leverage to do so. And the companies that don't like set the bar high enough and reach far enough are really going to be left behind by those that do. So be bold, think way outside of your comfort zone, because this is one of those once in a career opportunities, maybe once in a lifetime opportunities to do so. I think the second is we do get focused a lot on the technology. You know, I've got Zoom here, and I've got, you know, split tunnel VPN, and I need endpoint management, and I need, you know, At the end of the day, relationships matter, and don't shortchange those relationships. So spend the time when you're connecting with your business partners, you're connecting with your customers, as Fran said, you're connecting with your peers. Spend time on the people side. We, for many years, have kind of been depositing, you know, kind of analog, you know, kind of coinage in the relationship bank through connecting with people and sharing with people, interacting with people. We've been for 4.5 months sort of doing digital withdrawals from that relationship bank, right? You've got to keep putting money back in the bank. So find ways to connect with people. Relationships really, really matter. And if they all become just sort of digital transactions, over time they begin to fade. And then my last comment would be kind of people first. So, similar to the other two, at the end of the day, we're just companies made up of people. And an old boss of mine used to say, sort of, people don't work for companies, they work for people. And if you're not connecting with and supporting and driving the cultural decision-making and thought process and rewarding and acknowledging your people and helping them with their mental health, helping them, you know, kind of with their balance, then you're really not necessarily as strong or as resilient as you could be. So people first.
Love that, Ralph. That's great. Again, people work for people and not just companies. What a great way to close this out. So again, Sheila, Fran, Ralph, big thank you for being our panelists. A thank you to the Opsera team.
Thank you.
Everybody, you've got 5 seconds to jump to your next Zoom session. Take care, everybody.
Exactly. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Stay well,
Thank you.
stay healthy.